You're very welcome to Tree Talk episode 137 with myself, Jack Neville, and Matt Callan of the Weekly Observer and Vale Star. Another bumper weekend of GA action with the return of the senior Camogie side as well as games for the junior Camogie side, the senior footballers and the senior hurlers. We'll be looking back on last week's games and looking ahead to this weekend's games, so do stay tuned.
The impression of the game you get out with what you put into it's like a walk of life. If you're good enough, go out and get it, no more about it.
Not so much control in the centre of the field from Kilkenny as Richie Bennett sends it high and over the bar.
Your mother sends you down to the shop for a pound's worth of goods and she gives you 50 pence. You can't get the pound's worth of goods, can you?
Just about kept in. Oh, well done, Shawnee Buckley. To do that to Tomas O'Shea, he deserves to score from here. One of the highlights of the Sunday game.
Limerick went out there from the work out today. No more about it. They made all the running, that was it. Put the ball over the bar and the back of it, and that's it. No ifs, no buts.
Is there much time left? We have a couple of injuries. Here comes Kieran Carey. Carey leading the charge of the right brigade. 45 metres out. He's a chance to score. He's put it hard. He's put it over.
There's no sympathy in this game for anybody.
And I suppose, Matt, after a great weekend last weekend, I suppose, for the Limerick senior footballers, there's nowhere else to start but with Billy Lee and his side, who are building every year and fully deserving of a 113 to 14 point win over the defending Munster champions. I suppose, what was your biggest takeaway from that win for Limerick?
Well, I suppose the biggest takeaway, a couple of things. The main one being that, you always wonder from season to season, how good form in one season will translate into the other, whether you can continue it or not. And, you'll be slightly worried. And I suppose we were talking in the last couple of weeks, Jack, and we were saying that, the scheduling wasn't very kind to Limerick in that they had the Munster champions first up, their only home game. But by God, and, we hear it's always said that you must make home form count and build on it. Like, by God, Billy Lee and his men, they certainly did it, and probably did it slightly the hard way insofar that they were a bit unsettling. And when Tipperary got those early 4 points, you were beginning to wonder, was the step a bit too much? Once they got into the groove, and particularly the third quarter, and that special goal from Danny Neville, which he has in his locker all day, as we know. And I suppose the most impressive thing was that when they got their noses in front, they were able to defend it and they were able to see out the game, because Tipperary had a run of 3 scores there together at one stage late in the game, and it looked as if the momentum was shifting back to Tip. But by God, Limerick dug in and dug it out. It was one of those memorable victories for this group of players now. Like they have given us, if you go back to 2019, over the last 2 years, this group of players and this squad have given us some memorable moments. And I suppose Tipperary have been on the receiving end of 2 of them. The 2019 Munster Championship in Hurlers. Now, last year we came all so close, and we were speculating last week that how much of a motivating factor would it be for Billy Lee and his men, and it certainly proved to be just that. Now, another aspect of it, of course, is like Billy Lee and Limerick played half the game without Ian Corbett, an all-star nominee. Now, who was we know that what Ian Corbett brings to the table. We don't have to recount that anymore. It's well known what he's capable of. And coupled with that, he was forced with 2 late changes. When he had to replace Paul Maher. And if you remember, Jack, Paul Maher was one of the outstanding performers right through last year, through the McGrath Cup, the league, and the championship. And he also had to replace Padraig Scanlon. Now, Mike Donovan came in, and Adrian Enright came in to fill the slots. And I suppose, without wanting to jump the gun, they obviously must have satisfied what Billy wanted, because they're named from the off for Tullamore on Saturday.
Yeah, they are named from the start, and we just put the team up there for you. As you mentioned, those changes, Michael Donovan and Adrian retained their places. So you've Donald Sullivan in goals, Sean O'Dea, Brian Fanny, Michael Donovan as full-back line, Tony McCarthy, Robbie Childs, Gordon Brown, Derek Tracy and Tommy Childs, partner midfield, half forward line of Keane Sheehan, Killian Fahey and Tommy Griffin, and then full forward line of Adrian Wright, Danny Neville and Hugh Burke. Among the bench, you have Padraig De Bruyne is named among the replacements this week, as is Kevin Howard, who will be in line to make his debut. But just looking at that squad, Matt, there's real strength in depth there in the Limerick side. And one thing Billy has definitely done over the last few years is that if players play well, they're rewarded regardless of name or what they've done in the past. He definitely goes with foreign players.
Absolutely, and that's the point I made that I've just made, that obviously Mike Donovan and Adrian Enright did enough last Saturday to satisfy Billy that they were worthy of a starting place this time. Now we know what they're capable of. That they're very, very good footballers, and had decent seasons last year. So it's a strong position that Billy is building that squad, because he looks at his bench and he's got Ian Corbett number one to come off the bench, and like he's Paul Maher to come off the bench as well. That is a very, very strong position to be in, to have players of that caliber to come off the bench. And it's nice to see Kevin Howard getting an opportunity. He was one of the standout performers in Trahan's run to winning the county intermediate championship last year. So like he deserves his run, and possibly may get on the pitch, which would be very, very good for him. And is somebody else coming through a bit of fresh blood. But I have no doubt that the thinking with Ian Corbett is that Ian Corbett is obviously not 100% fit at the minute, and that that Billy is afraid or is not prepared to risk him over a 70-minute period, and that he obviously wants to use him in Tullamore as the need may arise.
Yeah, but it's definitely a nice luxury to have an All-Star nominee on the bench. I suppose going into the game against Offaly this weekend, I'm kind of getting past the Tipperary game last week. Offaly beat Wicklow, so this game really is, I suppose you could say, really with kind of certainty that whoever wins this game, that you're thereabouts into promotion, like as long as you don't have a disaster result on the last day. Will that be playing in the minds of the side, or will they be able to focus on just this individual game with another round to come?
Yeah, it's hard to know. I felt going in, and I said it last week, that I felt no matter what was said or what was not said about the Munster semi-final last year, that subconsciously that it would be a motivating factor for the players. I honestly think, Billy Lee this week will be trying to he will be trying to shut out, I suppose, the Tipperary performance and focus solely on Offaly, without focusing on the ramifications of a win against Offaly. I think he'll be doing his best, but in a 3-match run, the players will be well able, to figure out the ramifications of the permutations of the result. But a win, of course, you're right. A win will virtually assure him of a place in the Division 3 South semi-final, of the Division 3 semi-final, which would be an absolutely fantastic achievement on your first year up, because you always worry about teams coming up, Jack, and there is greater cause for worry when you have a short, sharp, truncated season, because were Limerick to have the normal Division 3 and have 7 games, like you'd have a bit of leg room at the start to find your feet, and grow into your new environment. But it's all systems go from the start on this one. So like I'd be pretty confident that Limerick can get a result against Offaly. Now Offaly went to Ockram, and we all know about Ockram. Ockram has been it has been the graveyard of so many high hopes in the league and indeed in the championship. And like Billy was on record of saying last week, you will recall in your own interview, Jack, that he recalls the last day that Limerick went to Ockram, did all the work against the Gale in the first half and failed to win the football match. So there is no point in saying that it wasn't a big achievement by Offaly to win in Ockram. And like Offaly didn't root up any trees last year. Could have possibly passed Limerick on the way down to Division 4 when Limerick were on the way up. So, it may be a bit of early seasons jitters in Division 3 for Wicklow, but it's an Offaly challenge that has to be taken very, very seriously, and we've got to discount the fact that you've beaten the Munster Championship champions. This is a different game. And of course, we look back on Offaly and we played Offaly in a very, very important game in 2013, the league final in Croke Park, and won it. And the narrative leading into that game was that it was Offaly's to lose. And our most recent meeting with Offaly was in Newcastle West the year that we were relegated to Division 4. I think it was in 2017, and we lost by a couple of goals. But we lost. It was the last round. Limerick's fate had been sealed going into the game, so I wouldn't read too much into that. But the dynamic between the counties is favourable enough to Limerick. So, going to Tullamore, it's not as formidable going to Tullamore without a crowd, and I suspect that to some degree fed into going to Ockram without a crowd for Offaly last week. So, I think we're in with a right chance. Limerick's tails are up. Confidence is high, and I think they're quite capable of beating Offaly.
Yeah, they're definitely capable of beating Offaly. But if you had to nail your colours to the mast, I'm going to ask you now, if just to call it for Saturday.
I'm calling Limerick.
And hopefully you get a second win.
I'm calling Limerick, and it puts them in a very, very strong position. Now, mathematically, it doesn't assure you a place in the knockout stages, because you could technically, depending on the results elsewhere, you could have three counties ending in 4 points each, and then it would all come down to scoring difference. But if you're 4 points out of 4 in a 3-match run, you're into miracle territory to prevent you from not advancing.
Yeah, and that's what we'll be hoping for, and also will give confidence for the championship down the line. But I suppose moving away from the footballers, the stories coming out of Salt Hill last weekend, the hurlers are finished. 2 All-Irelands in 3 years, and they're finished now.
Oh, they're finished now. Sure, we've been listening to the narrative now. Everybody is wrong, and this one is wrong, and that one is wrong. And look, it's as simple as this, Jack. The longer the winning run was going on, the sooner it was about to end. That's just the simple logic of it. But in terms of retaining the league, it's a disappointing result, and it's a result that will make it very, very difficult for Limerick, which we flagged last week, to retain the league. Because I just give you the scenario. And Mark, mind you know, we'll be talking about the game in a second. We're Galway to beat Tipperary, and that's on in Hurlers, I think, on Saturday. Like, Limerick would trot out on Walsh Park on Sunday, 5 points behind Galway with 3 matches remaining. So you don't need to be Archimedes or Euclid or anyone to figure out that is a mountain to climb. You know, 5 points behind a Galway team that is playing well. I suppose it was a Galway team that didn't surprise us. It certainly didn't surprise me. If you recall our first treaty talk back, where we flagged the potential of Galway to be the most serious threat to Limerick, and I think if we needed verification of it, we got it over the 70 minutes in Salthill last Sunday.
Yeah, and look, the Limerick hurling team have given us more joy over the last 3 years than I don't know anyone else, but they probably haven't hit their peak, is probably fair to say, in the first 2 games. Is there anything that you could attribute that to?
I just don't know. I suppose it would be a lazy excuse to say, look, it's down to what we've had, the long layoff and all that sort of thing, and that they're a bit slow in getting into the groove, and that they hadn't enough of preparatory time, but they had, I suppose, as much preparatory time as anybody, you know, except those that chose to flout the rules. But I think Limerick are only just getting into their groove at this stage. Like in the past, they had early season games in the Munster Senior League where, you know, could throw caution to the wind a bit and do a bit of experimenting. And I suppose they've gone down the road of experimenting again during the current league. And but I think that you're gradually going to see what will be coming together between between Sunday and the Cork game in 2 weeks' time. Is you're going to see what basically more than the skeleton of what is going to be your championship team coming together, and what will be very, very welcome for Limerick is the break that's after the Waterford game, the 2-week lead into Cork. That will be very, very crucial for Limerick and how their season eventually pans out. And I honestly think that I don't know what you're going to see in Waterford, to be quite honest. We can only second guess what John Kiley will do with his team. We know straight away that there's definitely going to be one change with Dermot Burns, unfortunately, getting that suspension, and of course that is a story in itself, and in my view, it's disgraceful. But there's definitely going to be one change. But you know, what team is John Kiley going to send out on Sunday against Waterford? That is the big question.
It's certainly a big question, and I know we haven't a great track record, but if Dermot Burns is out and Declan Hannon is fit, I think the obvious scenario would be to see Kyle move out to the wing and put Declan Hannon at centre back, just maybe for a bit of stability. But aside from that, can you see any other changes? I know we didn't see Aaron Gallant from the start. He came on and he was brilliant, I thought. There's probably a few more that we haven't seen properly. We haven't seen Tom Morrissey and Hegarty together on the field, as far as I know. Do Limerick need to just put out their best 15 and get the result, or is this all right just to keep experimenting, and then once come championship, you know you're 15?
Yeah, I suppose that's the dilemma that Kiley is in. He has a number of options, like Dermot Burns out. I think he made it quite clear, that you know, more or less, that Declan Hannon will be back, which will be a big plus. Now, does he move Barry Nash to the right wing, or does he let him where he is and move Kyle Hayes up? You know, I think another option that's there is bringing Dan Morrissey back into the half back line and possibly putting Sean Finn back in the full back line. I would expect that I'd see Sean Finn back, put him back full back, Sean Finn, with possibly Dan Morrissey moving out to the wing, and Kyle Hayes going up front. But if there's one thing John Kiley is very good at, it's surprising you and me anyway, because we don't seem to be able to second guess what he's thinking on these things. But there are options there. Like, you're right when you say there's a straightforward option of just putting in Declan Hannon into the half-back line, moving Kyle out to the wing. That probably is a stick-out option, but I'm just making the point when I was reflecting on it that releasing Dan Morrissey back to the half-back line and bringing in Sean Finn at full-back is another option that's there. So after that, it's hard to see. Now Kyle Hayes could very well go up centre forward and be flanked by Tom Morrissey and Garrod Hegarty. That could very, very well happen. If that be the case, it would mean that Keane Lynch would be moved to midfield to partner either Willem O'Donoghue or Darragh O'Donovan. Like that, there are options there. Now, inside, I'm pretty certain, I'm pretty convinced that Aaron Gillan is going to start. Seamus Flanagan, he's on fire. I think he'll stay in. Left corner forward, is it too soon for Graham Mulcahy? Will David Dempsey get another shot there, or will it be Peter Casey? They're the sort of options, and we haven't spoken at all about David Reedy, who has been the leading scorer in the last two games. Like, will there were Kyle Hayes not to be brought forward? Would David Reedy be slotted into the half-forward line? So there are multiple of options there, and there are multiple of things that might transpire. Whether John will go from somebody new or pull somebody in. Would he go for somebody like Colm Coughlin? Yeah. Like he gave Carl O'Neill a chance in Galway? The options are there, Jack, and it is very, very hard to second guess them.
Yeah, and there's definitely brilliant options there. And I just thought last week in Salt Hill, if anyone came away with more credit than had going into the game, it was probably Dan Morrissey at fullback. But it remains to be seen what he'll go for. Just on Galway for a second, Matt, and I know it was a really contrasting weekend for Galway between their footballers and hurlers. And I suppose against Kerry, there was probably a lot made of how poor Galway were. And again, Limerick, it was how poor Limerick were. But how much credit has to go to Galway, and how much of a marker have they laid down so far in the league?
I think they've laid down a very firm marker. And Joe Canning didn't start. He came on. Dahi Burke didn't feature at all. And David Burke, who I thought had a very, very impressive start to the game, went off injured. So it's a talented Galway side, and it has to be a talented Galway side for the number of underage successes that they have had in recent years. They have to have them coming through, and we were speculating last weekend that it's all about getting the blend in Galway. Like the two Manions, I thought they were excellent. Conor Whelan. Everywhere you look, there was talent. Brian Concannon. And they had players to come off the bench. Galway didn't show us anything that we didn't already suspect, that they are serious contenders. And all they did was made a very, very firm statement, because there were doubts raised. And I wouldn't say doubts, but after they beat Westmeath by 30 points, the narrative was that they were damned if they did, they were damned if they didn't, kind of stuff. But I think this is a serious statement of intent. You get the All Ireland champions, all right, in your own backyard, and as we've already flagged, that without crowds, I don't think the home advantage is as much as it would be if there were. And I think they made a serious statement of intent right from start to finish, right throughout.
Yeah, they've definitely been the form team of the league.
We really can't argue, and John kind of nailed this when he said that the best team out there won the match today, which they did. Galway were the better team on Sunday.
Yeah, and just... Go on, Matt. Yeah,
but look, having said that, Limerick, never really came near the level of performance that we have come to expect, and which they have spoiled us with, I suppose, for the last 2 years.
Yeah, and you'll be hoping that they can get back to that level soon. But just as you mentioned, John Kiley there, I suppose there was a lot made of his interview after the game last week, and an awful lot of people agreed with him. But we know how good he is as a manager, but as a person as well, just to, I suppose, to have the dignity and the courage to come out and say what I said was wrong when he could have really doubled down like a lot of managers. It just shows the kind of man John Kiley is, doesn't it?
Well, it's something that we didn't know, and I think we flagged it about the type of man he is. Absolutely top class as a manager, top class as an educationalist, top class as a man, John Kiley.
Yeah, and it's just important to flag that, because it would have been as easy, probably easier for John just to say it was in the heat of the moment and as I said, double down on it. But to his credit, he came out and said what he said was wrong, even though I'd say a lot of people don't think what he said was wrong. But moving on from
Jack,
that anyway.
What he said about the advantage rule and the freeze, nobody could argue with him. It was this piece about simulation. Nobody could argue with him, but we had 8 top managers, Jack, who appeared on the Alliance Sunday League on Sunday, and all sang dumb. And they had the same problems with the rules and the applications. And are we to derive from that those 8 managers are quite happy to see free-ridden games? That's the only conclusion I can come to. At least John Kiley had the guts to spell it out and to challenge those that changed it. It's extraordinary to me, Jack. We have people that can change anything at the drop of a hat in our association, and we hadn't people that were able to resist the government's decision to delete hurling from being hurling and Gaelic games from being an elite sport in this country. They sheepishly walked away when they can change the rules, and they can suspend Dermot Burns, and they can do this, do that, and the next thing, but they allowed, they were walked upon when it came to that our national games being under class sports.
Yeah, and certainly the freeze, the sheer amount of freeze, whether the managers are saying or not, there's no one that wants to see all these frees being taken. But it's something that's getting so much scrutiny that you'd imagine that something will be done about it, and it's just probably up to the refs a small bit. And again, we don't want to criticize refs, but just to probably be a bit more lenient and let the game flow. And I know the advantage rule and all the rule changes don't help, but coming away from that for the time being, because look, we're hoping for a good game this weekend, and I've asked you the last 2 weekends. But I suppose it applies again. Like, who is this a bigger game for, Limerick or Waterford? Limerick obviously aren't without a win in the first 2 games. Waterford got a win, albeit against Westmeath, and only by 3 points. They did have a lot of changes, but Waterford will probably still be reeling somewhat from that All-Ireland final loss, where they got a clipping really 30 points to 19 and never really looked like winning. So, like, Limerick need the win, but Waterford probably needs a victory over Limerick. So who would it be a bigger game for, do you think?
It's a bigger game. It's a bigger game for Waterford, Jack, because their record against Limerick in recent years has been abysmal. Let's face it. And if you can indulge me for a second, I'll tell you why it has been abysmal. They met last year 3 times. They met in the league, and Waterford ran Limerick to 5 points in the Gaelic grounds. They met in the Munster final, and whilst they put up a decent performance, they were never really going to win the Munster final. And we had the All-Ireland final in Croke Park, which, as you said, concession of 30 points to 19. A final that was over from very, very early in the game, unfortunately from a Waterford point of view. You go back to the league final in 2019. A very, very comfortable win for Limerick in the league final in 2019 in Croke Park. You go back to the Munster Championship under the round robin format in 2018 and 2019. Huge win for Limerick in 2018 in the Gaelic grounds. Even a bigger win for Limerick in 2019 in Walsh Park. So, the omens for Waterford against Limerick are not good. Now, in the current campaign, all right, they sit with 2 points, 1 point better off than Limerick. For the game against Cork, they fielded 9 of the All-Ireland, that All-Ireland team. For the game against Westmeath, they fielded 3 of the All-Ireland team. Ian Kenny, Jack Fagan, and Jack Prendergast. And, Waterford have been badly hit in many ways. Like, they have the ongoing absence of Padraig Mahoney for heading on 2 years now. And, that has been compounded by the loss of Tadhg de Búrca. And to add to their woes, Stephen O'Keefe is the goalkeeper, long-standing goalkeeper, is taking a year out. So Jamie Barron isn't back in the fold yet. Desi Hutchinson is just working his. I'm not saying that Jamie Barron has left the fold or anything, but he hasn't featured in the league yet. Desi Hutchinson only made a cameo appearance last week, as did Kevin Moran. So what we're talking about there is, as we're talking about their leading players. So I think it'll be all hands on the deck for Waterford on Sunday. I can see Liam Cahill fielding a very, very, very strong team. Like they need a psychological victory for over Limerick. And I suppose in the context of their own championship ambitions, they need a psychological victory to get everything back on the rails again. After the defeat of the All-Ireland final. The defeat in the All-Ireland final was very, very comprehensive, Jack. And it was something like that would be very, very hard for any county to recover from. You could just picture if it were Limerick, we would be in a difficult situation as well. So the answer to your question, even though I went the scenic route to answer it, is that it's a bigger game for a much bigger game for Waterford. In the context of the league, if you want to retain the league, it's a huge game for Limerick, because Limerick have one permutation now in the league. Let's call a spade, Jack. Win 3 games and see where does it take you. It doesn't even guarantee you that you'll win the league.
No, and by the look of this, you can't see Galway losing 2 games. Probably can't see, well, maybe Cork if Limerick are to play them, but the league probably does seem to be out of Limerick's hands somewhat. But you say it's probably a bigger game for Waterford. It's also a big game for Limerick, if you had to call it, Matt.
Well, I'm calling Limerick. I think John Kiley will field a strong team going down there, and they will use the fortnight to before the Cork game for to build on what he hopes will be a victory, and take it from there. I'm going for Limerick to win it, Jack.
Yeah, and it's probably a very long, not a very long time, but it's probably a long time. I'd say probably never in John Kiley's term did he go 3 games without a win. But I suppose we'll wait and see. But I would be in agreement with you that Limerick can finally get their first win of the season, kind of get the things back on track. But all this talk of Limerick, I suppose, falling off the wagon and such, like, it's way too early and not right at all. But again, we'll wait and see. I suppose we'll have the senior Camogie team back in action this weekend. We might start with the junior side, though, that had a brilliant win last weekend in their opener. And I suppose I'll just get their team up. They're playing Carlow this weekend. Their team has been named, and there's notably a few players from last weekend's win that have been called up to senior side, but they're going with Aoife Corbett in goals, Megan Ryan, Roisin Mann, and Yvonne Lee in the full-back line. You've Grace Lee, Aoife Coughlin, Shauna Cunningham in half-back line, Aisling Cunningham and Stephanie Wolfe partner in midfield. Michelle Curtin, Noelle Curtin, and Alva Larkin make up the half-forward line. Valerie Sheehan, Ciara English, and Enya Harrington then are in the full forward line. And I suppose one name that's probably noticeably absent from that team is Anya Cunningham. She's drafted into the seniors, but just on the junior side, they play Carlow this weekend, but they got the league off to a brilliant start against Clare. And a real buzz around Limerick Camogie now after a below par 2020.
Yeah, and I saw the game last Saturday, and it was a pleasure to watch it, Jack. Limerick scored 216, 214 of which came from open play. And you mentioned Anya Cunningham there was in absolutely sparkling form. 6 points, 6 points from open play, a fantastic contribution. And we had excellent scoring contributions also from our teammate in Killeedy, Valerie Shanahan, who got 1-2 from play, and Michelle Curtin from Temple Glanton, who got something similar, or 1-2 or 1-3 from play. But overall, it was an excellent performance, Jack. 216 to 210. Factor into it, literally with the last puck of the game, Clare got a goal from a free, and the referee called for the ball. The ball wasn't even poked out after it. So like that, the victory was more comprehensive than the scoreline would suggest, and it psychologically it was a very important victory, because at this level, Clare have had the upper hand in Limerick in recent years, and like it surprises me that there's only one fast track into the senior team for Saturday's game in Ennis, but Pat Ryan is just finding his feet. He has a big squad. He told us afterwards he's pulling from 70 players at the moment, and it's a bit of a juggling job and a bit of a balancing job between the seniors and juniors. And I put that very point to him after about that, you know, if the junior game was an audition last weekend for senior places this weekend, certainly I thought as many as 4 or 5 or possibly 6 players put up their hand and would, along with Anya Cunningham, probably have featured in the manager's thoughts and in his backroom team's thoughts when they were naming the senior team to play Clare. Now there are 3 changes that have been made to the junior team. Aoife Corbett, who is Ian's sister, is coming in, and as is Ciara English from Granabellangary and Enya Harrington from the Piersic, and they come in instead of Leah Carroll, Aoife Curtin, and of course the aforementioned Anya Cunningham, who has been promoted. But it's a very, very strong squad, a very, very encouraging squad. But I tend to think that Carlow will probably be a step up on Clare. I think you must remember, this is Carlow's first team, and Carlow have made a lot of progress and you know, in recent years, and I think it'll be a difficult game for Limerick going up to Carlow. Of course, we had a very notable win over Carlow in 2014 when we beat him in the Junior All Ireland final above in Moneygall. So it's one I'm going to sit on the fence, Jack, and you can try all day to get me to come off it, but I'm not. I'm sitting on the fence, but I give Limerick a very good chance if they repeat the performance. But you know, you have the issue now of we say Pat Ryan is managing both sides. He cannot bilocate. He cannot be in Ennis and Carlow at virtually the same time. So obviously, and Shane Fitzgerald is going to be taking over the management, I understand, of the junior team in Carlow on Saturday. But I think if they reproduce the performance that they showed against Clare, they're in a very, very good position.
Yeah, and even if you aren't going to the side in the game this weekend, I suppose just for the junior side and as a one big squad, it's probably very important that they got the season off to a good start, and there's probably a positive vibe with training this week, and it leads nicely into the seniors playing this weekend. And obviously the juniors will be out first, but the seniors probably won't be able to watch that game. But just for a psychological aspect, it's very good for Limerick Camogie, that they got the season off to a winning start when realistically it's just one big squad.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic. And you're right, there will be a buzz in training this week because they're all training as one huge squad. And, this thing, success and confidence can be contagious. And looking at the team that Pat Ryan has named in the circumstances, it's a very, very strong team. Unfortunately, of course, that Niamh Ryan is out through injury, the team vice captain. But it's a very, very experienced team. And apart from Anya Cunningham and to a lesser, degree, maybe Aisling Scanlon, most of those players have a lot of camogie under their belts, which is it will be a very, very experienced Limerick team that will be going to join us on Saturday, and going to be captained by Cameron O'Leary. Everybody is back on board now. There were some players that weren't making themselves available last year for various reasons. Everybody seems to be back on board, so it's all systems go, and they'll be facing in a Clare team that will really have their backs to the wall and will be under pressure, because despite pushing Galway for 40 odd minutes of the game in Athenry last Saturday, they eventually lost the match. So Clare are in a make or break situation, Jack. It's win or bust in this one. If they lose, they're out of the race for this year, and it'll reduce the Galway Limerick game the following week to a shootout for first and second place. So it's a huge game in terms of for Clare, but equally, of course, it's huge for Limerick. That the new Pat Ryan ran at senior level apes what happened in Kilmallock last Saturday and gets off to a winning start.
Yeah, and just to run through the senior team, Lauren, and as you said, it's a very, very experienced team. Lauren Neal in goals, Marion Quaid, Murrin Kramer, and Mairead Ryan make up the fullback line. Megan O'Mara, Judith Mulcahy, and Roisin Ambrose, Aisling Scanlon, and Karen O'Leary, who is captain for the year, in midfield. Cueva lines, Deborah Murphy and Sophie O'Callaghan in the half-forward line, and then the aforementioned Anya Cunningham, Rebecca DeLee, and Cueva Costello. And I suppose, not to single anyone out, but at 14, Rebecca DeLee, it's brilliant to see such a wonderful player back after time away with injury.
Absolutely fantastic. Back after her cruciate, and she's forming what on paper, Jack, and what we know to be a very potent full forward line. The trick for Limerick will be to ensure that those three players get a good supply of the ball, because it's a luxury you cannot afford to have players of that quality inside in the full forward line and nothing going into them. So there will be a lot of responsibility on the players in the middle third of the field. We all know what Karen O'Leary brings to the table. Whether she's captain or not, Karen O'Leary is a leader, full of energy, full of get up and go. And like we all remember the goal that she got, that actually that beat Dublin inside an LIT last year. You and I were there together, Jack, if you recall. It was a goal for the ages, and it needed somebody of that caliber to take the game by the scruff of the neck and get the bloody thing, and she did it. But this is the type of leadership she's going to bring around the middle, because I see Karen O'Leary as being somebody that's going to be leading from the front.
Yeah, and just on the game itself, obviously Clare, as you mentioned, have that loss. And how important would it be for Limerick if they can get past Clare, that they can go into the game against Galway, and as you said, it's a shootout first and second, that they can really test themselves against the best without having to worry about finishing last or having two losses?
Yeah, I think it's very, very, very important. And You know, it's that magical thing, Jack, that they call win in the first game. Absolutely huge, you know, and it's in inverted commas and it's in lights and everything. And this particular game, it's huge. I'm really looking forward to being there on Saturday. You know, I honestly think, and I'm going to come off the fence now before you start complaining. It's a huge game for Limerick, and I'm going there with a certain level of confidence that Limerick are going to win.
Yeah, and I'd echo that sentiment. I think there's just a feel-good factor around Limerick Camogie at the moment, and I've been in for walks around UL where they're training, and there's a huge buzz, there's huge numbers, and Pat Ryan has really kind of got everyone rowing in the same direction, in the same boat. I'm glad you came off the fence because I was going to ask you about that. Just again for anyone,
I would use the caveat, and I'm repeating myself now, I would use the caveat. Absolutely crucial that we see a lot of ball and a lot of fast ball going into the three players, Anya Cunningham, Rebecca DeLee, and Caoimhe Costello. Now, if it weren't happening, Pat Ryan has options in that he can certainly withdraw. We know what Rebecca DeLee can supply out the field as well as being inside at full forward. We also know what Caoimhe Costello brings. Caoimhe Costello is somebody like Cameron O'Leary, a natural leader full of energy, and will probably be entrusted, I presume, with the free-taking duties, which he has grown into very, very well in the last 12 months. So hopefully there is great hope around Limerick Camogie at the moment, and rightly so. And let's hope that it will be played out in Carlow at 2:00 on Saturday, and in Father McNamara Park at 4:30 on Saturday later that evening. I'm quite hopeful. I'm hopeful that they'll beat Carlow. I found it very, very hard to get a fix on Carlow during the week, but the one thing that we did know is that they went to Waterford, went to Kill last week, and had a good win there. So, you know, that speaks for itself as far as I'd be concerned. You know, I think it because Waterford have a decent junior team. We've seen it the last couple of years. They've played Limerick, and there's been very, very little between them. So, and you know, just getting back to the juniors again, like it's a junior team, Jack, that has a lot of big game experience. And we made that point last week. In that you have a number of players there who played in the 2019 All-Ireland Junior Final, and coupled with a number of players who played in the 2019 Minor Final. So, like, there is no shortage of experience there, and there is no shortage of big game experience there. So, like, and I think that was played out last Saturday in Kilmallock in the victory over Clare, and I'm just hoping for more of the same on Saturday.
Yeah, we're all hopeful for more of the same. Excuse me. I suppose just for fixture-wise, the seniors are playing on Saturday at 4:30. That game was originally down for 4th. 4:30 on Saturday in Father McNamara Park. It's been streamed live by Channel Clare if anyone wants to check that out. And the juniors are out Saturday afternoon before that at 2:00 in Carlow. We're hoping for 4 wins. So for all the Limerick teams over the weekend, Matt. But before we finish, I suppose we'll have to address the situation with the ladies' football and the cancellation of the All-Ireland series for the underage grades. I suppose every week there's something negative that we have to touch on, and unfortunately this week it's the underage, and like for all those girls and ladies from that age that haven't been able to play for the last year and haven't been able to go to school for a lot of it, it's just another blow for them.
It's a huge blow for them. Like, they can take part in the provincial championships, but you know, we know what they are. But you know, if you know, it's games at least for them. But you know, the carrot was really to try and get into the All-Ireland series, and that to have them, you know, wiped off the slate for minor under 16 and under 14 for a second year running. is extremely disappointment. And you saw some very, very strong statements coming out during the week from Limerick, our own county, and indeed a very, very strong statement from Cork on the matter. You'd have to agree with him. And I, for the most part, and I've said it a number of times that I put down the Ladies Football Association as a paragon as to an organisation that does things right, and they do for the most part. Like we've seen 55,000 at that All-Ireland final in Croke Park, following on 50,000 the previous year. That speaks volumes for the way that they're running their organisation. I know we had the debacle between Galway and Cork in the All-Ireland semi-final last year, but like in fairness, if the ground was dangerous, it was dangerous, and they had to to move the game at short notice. But generally, for the most part, they for 95% of the thing they do things right, and how you'd like to see them to be done. I think they're falling down, and I think they're missing it on this one. I'm personally very disappointed with this one, with this particular decision. Now, our own Limerick minor manager, Aidan Fitzpatrick, had invested an awful lot of work on the Limerick minor team, on the hope of getting into the All-Ireland series. It's presumptuous to say you'll be in it, but when you're starting off, everybody's starting off basically at a level playing field. An awful lot of work has been done at underage in Limerick ladies football, and for the second year running, to have a group of players that they don't get the opportunity that those in other years have got. I think it's extremely disappointing. You have a whole cohort of girls there. If you take the minors and the under 16s, to a lesser extent the under 14s, the way their lives have been tossed into turmoil because of the pandemic, not just their sporting lives, but their social lives, and above all their educational lives. And this was an opportunity to give them something to look forward to. Now, thankfully, they were getting out of this pandemic. It shouldn't be any great difficulty or pose any problem, to organise a few late rounds of the All-Ireland series. All you're talking about is semi-finals and finals, Jack.
Yeah, and it does appear that simple.
It is a pity, it is sad, and it is an opportunity lost to give something to our young people.
Yeah, and it's definitely an opportunity lost. But look, you have to remain hopeful, and it's been handed down that ruling. But hopefully there'll be a long summer there, yes. And the more vaccines we have, and the more we come out of this pandemic, there might be scope for changing that. Again, we'll have to wait and see.
I honestly hope, Jack, that there will be a rethink similar to the one with the Camogie Association and the leagues. We were talking about it last week. It was a ridiculous situation. We didn't know till the Tuesday before the league started that we were having leagues.
Yeah, but again, as we said before, people can make mistakes, and John Kiley was one that put his hand up. The Camogie Association did the same last week. So hopefully the Ladies Football Association can realise the error and see how much of an outlet this is for those players of that age, that their lives have been affected so much over the last 12 to 15 months. But again, that's a situation down the line, and we have the provincial championships to get through, and it could be a case of towards the end of the provincial championships we'll play an All-Ireland series, and it won't make any much difference to them because they'll be training hard anyway. But it's not a nice situation for those players to find themselves in, definitely at the moment. But as for this weekend, anyway, Matt, we have 4 games to look forward to. Next weekend we'll have the ladies footballers will be in action, but we're hoping for 4-4 from Limerick, and you're kind of cautiously giving a vote for 4-4. If I was to push you on that junior result.
No, Jack, you can try all day now. You can try till the game is over. 5 minutes at the end.
Okay, well, I'll hold you out to that one, so Matt. But again, much appreciated for talking to you, Matt. We're hoping for four wins for Limerick this weekend. Hopeful of it. Footballers or the junior Camogie team start the action at 2 o'clock on Saturday. The footballers are on at 3 o'clock on Saturday. The senior Camogie side at 4:30 on Saturday, and then the hurlers at 3:45 on Sunday. Until next week, Matt. Thank you very much, and thanks for everyone for watching.
Limerick a boo.
Impression again we get out with what you put into. It's like a walk of life. If you're good enough, go out and get it, no more about it.
But not so much control in the centre of the field from Kilkenny as Richie Bennett sends it high and over the bar.
Your mother sends you down to the shop for a pound's worth of goods and she gives you 50 pence. You can't get the pound's worth of goods, can you?
Just about kept in. Oh, well done, Johnny Buckley. To do that to Tommaso Shea, he deserves to score from here. One of the highlights of the Sunday game.
Limerick went out there from the workout today. No more about it. They made all the running, that was it. Put the ball over the bar and the back of it, and that's it. No ifs, no buts.
Is there much time left? We have a couple of injuries. Here comes Kieran Curry. Curry leading the charge of the right brigade. 45 metres out. He's a chance to score. He's put it high. He's put it over.
There's no sympathy in this game for anybody.